Hello, and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. We're on day number 4 of my 25 Christmas and holiday-themed daily art uploads. I hope you're enjoying this so far. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between art referencing and art theft. The piece I'm doing may look really familiar to any of you watching who were subscribed to last December, and that's because I'm redrawing the very first piece I ever did in this particular black paper Pentalic sketchbook. The black paper was new to me. The Uniball Signal white gel pens were relatively new to me. I decided to try them out together and ended up doing a winter scene. I named and tagged the video hoping it would come up as suggested when people watch Chloe Rose playing around with colored paper, and her videos are suggested to me when I rewatch my old one, so I guess I did something right. Maybe? Either way, I'm doing basically the same piece again, not trying for an exact match. This time I'm using my Pentel Hybrid Technica white gel pen, and I've styled pretty much every element of this differently, but the elements are all present and in the same place as last time. The reason I'm pairing this particular topic with this footage is because back in October, an artist named Aisha posted this to Instagram and several similar sites. If you read her description there, you'll notice she tagged my Instagram account after the word reference. You'll also notice that her piece is almost an exact copy of my piece, and she's done it with the same Uniball white gel pen, I asked. Quite possibly on the same paper. Before anyone gets all up in arms about me naming names and posting her stuff here in my video, I did not go hunting, she tagged me. She made herself known. This, my friends, is not reference. You cannot replicate another artist's work exactly or almost exactly, particularly in the same medium, and call it referencing. This is copying. This is a study. If you have permission from the original artist, that's one thing, but Aisha did not have my permission. She did not contact me before posting her copy of my art. Had she not tagged me, I would never have known she had copied my art, and her audience would never know that this composition isn't her original work. Imagine now that she decides to polish up her photo or scan and sell the design as a print or on merchandise, or license it out to some company. She would then be making financial gains from my design. That is theft, plain and simple. She has not changed the composition of the piece enough to call it inspiration. She has not done it in a totally different medium, such as sculpting the scene or turning it into a wall mural. She has not transformed it into a work of satire. She simply copied my two-dimensional artwork on paper as another piece of two-dimensional artwork on paper, posted it all over the internet, and casually dropped my name as a reference, as if I were a photographer who had released a photo for reference work. That's not how it works. I'm not saying you can't replicate an artist's work for practice. That's called doing a study, and it's absolutely beneficial, and it's completely okay, as long as you're only doing it for yourself. If you do studies of other artists' work and you decide to post it publicly, be very, very careful. Make sure you explicitly state that it's a study of a particular piece and name the artist. Make sure that artist or any other copyright holder is okay with people doing that, or at least hasn't left a paper trail all over the internet of issuing takedowns. Make sure you upload lower resolution or well watermarked images so that it can't be stolen. That last bit is good advice for any art you post, really. Even if you're just practicing and not going to use the image for financial gains yourself, there are plenty of knockoff clothing and merchandise companies out there in China and surrounding area countries that scour the internet for images they can snag and use without permission. And they don't care if the image they're stealing is the original or a copy either. It's not like they're licensing it legally anyway. When it comes to referencing in art, you really do have to tread carefully. If you're drawing people from live models, you need their permission, unless you're observing a crowd in a public space and not putting excessive identifiers on those individuals. If you're referencing a photograph that has not been released for artist's use, then you need to be using it only to judge which way the feathers lay on the back of a bird's neck, or how the folds of a cat's ears work, and similar little things like that, but not copying the photo exactly. If you're copying the photo exactly, which is a real and acceptable way to create art if you do it properly, you need to be using photographs that have been released for use. What that means is either the photo is in the public domain, and please do look up the definition of public domain if you don't know what it is. It has been uploaded to a sharing collection under Creative Commons, GNU, or a similar license, or the photographer has personally granted you permission to copy the image. If you're referencing another piece of art, you need to be treating it as inspiration only. If you're drawing an established character or particular canon species, item, or setting from a fandom, you can use existing artwork of that character as a reference to make sure your drawing looks like that character in terms of shapes, colors, etc. But your final piece should not be the same pose and setting as the original. That's copying. If you're pulling inspiration from another artwork, the keyword is inspiration. In this case, appropriate inspiration from this piece is to do a winter scene in white on black paper with use of negative space, possibly with trees and a cottage. Inspiration from this piece is not a winter scene in white on black paper featuring a gingerbread house style cottage with one window on the long wall, 3 windows on the short wall framing a door with its own window, and a thick layer of snow on the roof, with 4 snow-laden evergreen trees in the background, 1 to the left of the cottage and 3 to the right, otherwise completely flat ground covered in a thick, undisturbed blanket of snow, with stars in the sky, some of which are 4 pointed stylized stars, the largest of which is directly above the cottage, signed by the artist neatly under the ground snow line in the right-hand corner. That's copying. That's a study. By duplicating that and posting it publicly without permission, especially without stating that it is a study of my work, Aisha has stolen my work. Now, in this particular case, I wasn't very concerned to begin with because I don't intend to profit off this design, and as far as I can tell, neither does she. That said, when I went back to her profile so I could get that screenshot, I noticed that almost every post she makes has the same quote-unquote reference mentioned in the description. She's doing this to a lot of artists, and most of them aren't commenting on her posts, so I can only assume they didn't notice. If they've got big followings and therefore have too many notifications to look at in a timely manner before they expire, or if the tiny little thumbnail version of her artwork is so close to their own post that they didn't notice it wasn't a notification for a comment on their own image, then they have no idea. Tagging those people in the description, rather than tagging them on the image itself, which puts the post in a different gallery on that person's profile, is not enough to ensure that it's seen, and regardless, she probably doesn't have their permission either. So at this point, I have gone ahead and filed a copyright infringement report against her post, and I do hope she'll at least get an official warning from Instagram, and that she'll take notice and maybe learn a bit about the law and also just basic manners when it comes to referencing and artwork. I'm also concerned that she's tagged someone else in her bio as her mentor, and this person isn't telling her that this practice isn't okay. Either her mentor is just as oblivious and uninvolved as her references, or this other person also doesn't know this isn't okay and is possibly doing this as well. By the way, for the record, if I haven't released one of my pieces for Draw This in Your Style, or you and I are working on a collaboration redrawing each other's stuff, I don't want to see my work copied. This is my job. Creating artwork and fiction writing for profit is my job, and these are my products. So, fellow artists watching this, has anything like this ever happened to you? If so, what did you do about it and how did it turn out? Tomorrow's video will be more lighthearted, I promise. It's time for December's official Colors of the Month challenge from Marker Universe, and here's hoping they're done with making us use metallics. See you tomorrow!